Hey there everybody, it's Mark Crilley. I'm back with another how to draw video. This is going to be my video on how to draw devil or demon wings. You probably know what I'm talking about, just like the opposite of angel wings. Instead of being feather-based, they're a little more like dragon or bat wings or something like that. So I'm going to begin, as I often do, with just getting a sort of a simple grid pattern in place to get us started. Then I'll come back and start working on the guidelines. Alright, so here we go. We've got basically 3 vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines. These horizontal lines pretty much perfectly horizontal, parallel to one another. And then these lines sort of slanting in at different angles, and you'll notice this middle one is tilted just a little. That's going to help me for placing this character's head. But the main reason I'm putting this down here is to help you see where the wings go. So let me begin, and I might as well zoom in on this. We're going to draw some of the guidelines that put the figure in place. Then I'll pull back again to show you how to do the guidelines for the wings. Okay, so I've got these sort of basic guidelines in place for the character, and sorry that I time-lapsed through that, but really this is a video about the wings, not about drawing the character. Hopefully you can attach the wings that I show you how to draw in this video to a character of your own creation, but I wanted you to at least see how I go about putting the guidelines of a character in place. So let's pull back now and we'll get to the wings. Okay, so we've pulled way back, and now I can show you how to put in the basic guidelines of the wings. So starting over here where these 2 lines intersect, that's where I'm going to begin curving up to create the upper edge, the upper contour of one of the wings. If you look at this sort of shape here that's created there, that can kind of give you a sense of how to draw that line. Just after we've crossed this line, I want to make this go off into space here to finish off the top of the wing. I'm kind of moving over here as I work on this. Sort of a gentle curve there until you reach a point right off here. You know, what's happening, I've got this guy turned a little to one side, so you're going to notice that the sizes of the 2 wings appear different, but the main reason I'm doing it that way is it's going to make it look like he's sort of turned away a little bit. Now watch how I cross over here. I'm making a curve, and sometimes it's helpful to stop and figure out where is my line going to reattach to the body. So I'm going to stop right there, and then I'm going to figure a line right down here about the middle of his chest. Then I can kind of bring those 2 lines together into one big, long, curving swoop of a line. And if you imagine this carrying across, you're going to kind of be doing the same thing over here. And again, I'm going to stop at this point to kind of figure out where the upper edge of this wing is going to be. So let's come over here and have the wing kind of, again, intersecting right there at that sort of cross-section of lines. But this time I'm going to give it a slightly different shape. I want this one to curve back a little. I find that instead of having perfectly mirror-imaged wings, it can sometimes be more interesting to have them in slightly different positions. It just makes it look more realistic, I think. So I'm making a pretty good curve of a line that comes up here, and this point out here is going to maybe be my outer point. And if you compare these 2 lines, this one considerably longer. And then finally, knowing where I had started there, I can kind of curve just a little bit out and then loop back until I reach back to that original line I had started. And these 2 shapes here, these are where we're going to put these 2 wings. What I've noticed is that the tip of the wing is a little bit like a hand in a sense. If you imagine that this is the thumb, and it sort of looks like a spike or something, but imagine that is a thumb, you would have 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers coming off of that point. So I'm going to do that, keeping them fairly close to one another. They're all springing out from this one little circle here, fanning out, I guess I should say, as I so often do. And again, this coming down toward this line that we did way back at the beginning, that can kind of help you get these lines in the right place. This fourth finger, if you want to call it that, is going to actually cross past that line. And so this sort of giant hand, I guess, characterizes the edge of each wing. Now, to sort of speed things along, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing over here in time lapse. All right, so you got both of these hand shapes way out at the tips of the wings, and everyone has their different ways of doing these things. I find that there are basically two more ridges or spokes. What is the right word? I'm sure there is a technical. I never know. I should research this stuff. What kind of an idiot teacher am I? But anyway, there's these sort of spoke-like lines that come right across in here, dividing this into more or less 3 equal areas, at least on this side of the body. And I'm going to do kind of the same thing over here. We got one line curving across, and a second one right around here. And once you've got all of those lines in place, then you can kind of do the classic, to me they sort of look like the edge of an umbrella when you open an umbrella, that you end up with these sort of curving lines down here that finish off the wings. And, it can be a challenge to have them all have more or less the same shape. You don't want one suddenly going really deep in there, and everyone, I leave it to everyone to have their own preferences as to how deep they want these curves to go in, how spiky you want your wings to be. And let's go ahead and do the same thing over here. And here it becomes especially important to have them curve in at roughly the same, to roughly the same degree. I wonder if people are already shouting at the screen. Here's the technical name for those things, man. They're not called spokes. You are not drawing an umbrella or a bicycle tire. Get the vocabulary right before you start doing these lessons, man. Anyway, so finishing this up, this curves in here. And that, I think, is really maybe the toughest part, getting these guidelines in the right place. Once you've sort of figured that out, you can move on to doing the details. So I'm going to reposition the camera to focus in on one of the wings so I can show you how we move from this very rough guideline to something a little more precise. Okay, so I've kind of put the camera at an angle. I hope it doesn't throw everyone off that I've done that, but I just want to zoom in on this one wing as much as I can so that you can see the details. I find that it's going to be good to get a good solid width here, and you kind of imagine that this is almost like an elbow. We talked about this sort of being like a hand. So you could indicate, hey, there goes indicate. People have told me to take pride in the word indicate, so I am not going to apologize for it anymore. I'm going to indicate a sort of an elbow here. And then one thing that's interesting, I saw some artists do this, and I don't know if this is based on real anatomy of any types of wings out there, like bat wings or whatever, but if you got a certain secondary line cutting across here, some of these, I have to keep calling them spokes. What are they called? These things sort of divide into separate parts so that there's kind of like a joint right here almost. And again, I don't know if that comes from real wings out there, bird wings or bat wings or whatever, but it does look cool, that's for sure, if you can have a sort of a secondary joint, and by putting that curving line there, all of the secondary joints will occur in the same place. It looks nicer, I think, if they all are lined up that way rather than if you have them at different spots. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and each one of these kind of dividing into a secondary joint before heading on. And then, these edges, you can sort of decide to what degree you want them to extend past the edge and become sort of spikes. I guess it depends on how tough you want the wings to look. But if you do decide to go for this secondary joint, these things having second joints midway through them. I think you kind of have to extend that through the entire wing structure for it to make sense, to be consistent. And one last thing which I enjoy doing, and we'll get into this more when I do shading and final details and stuff, is to give the wing a sort of a weather-beaten, torn-up look. I think it's always fun once you've got the basic guidelines in place to go in and have little chunks of it torn out, little holes, I've always enjoyed drawing styles in which people add a weather-beaten quality to things, more than having everything be absolutely perfect and clean. I don't know, that's just a personal preference of mine. You certainly don't have to do this or any of these things if you don't like the way that looks. So I'm just adding in little spots here and there, and again, when I get to the final part of doing not guidelines, but the finishing lines and the shading and all that, that's when I'm really going to go to town, trying to create the feeling of a surface here, of a weather-beaten surface. Now, people are probably going to hate me for doing this, because a lot of people hate the time-lapse, but I'm not going to sit here and do the whole second wing in real time. I can't. So, but I will show you the process once again, this time in time-lapse. All right, well, I've pulled back and you got all of the basic guidelines in place. I think that really is the toughest part, is figuring out where does all this stuff go, where do the lines fall as you try to construct a pair of wings for your characters. I'm going to go ahead and move on into time-lapse to do some of the final line work. And to those of you who don't like time-lapse, I have a message. Give me a break. I'm just kidding. But I am going to, in order to keep this video at a reasonable length, I'm going to have to do the rest of this all in time-lapse, but I am going to zoom in, hopefully bit by bit, on the various areas so that you can see how I do it, how I get to that final result. So, here we go. Alright, well, there you have it, my final drawing with all the shading in there. You can see I put a lot of extra time into it, making it a little darker in some areas, a little lighter in other areas. I think a little patience in the shading will definitely pay off when it comes to drawing wings. But let me go ahead and thank anyone who has bought my graphic novel series, Miki Falls, or Brody's Ghost. Brody's Ghost is now available as an ebook, which is kind of cool. I hope to show that to you at some point on like an iPod Touch, show you what it looks like. In any case, though, let me go ahead and lay the pencil down, and thank you all for watching. Thanks especially to those who sort of spread the word about my videos by embedding them on Facebook or sending them out on Twitter. I really do appreciate you doing that for me. But let's go ahead and end this video. I hope you found it useful, and I will be back with another one real soon.